Your Highnesses, Excellencies, on behalf of the United Nations, it is a great honor to speak at this important event as a special guest. And I would like to convey the very warm greetings of the United Nations Secretary General, His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres, who recently participated in the summit of the League of Arab States on 29th of March in Jordan. On behalf of the United Nations Counterterrorism Center and the United Nations Counterterrorism Implementation Task Force that coordinates the work of 38 United Nations agencies in the field of counterterrorism, let me say that our participation in this important event is a demonstration of the political will of the United Nations to strengthen its partnership and collaboration with the League of Arab States, including through this august forum of the Council of Arab Interior Ministers. Your Highnesses, Excellencies, let me stress that violent extremism and terrorism have now become a global and transnational threat and a hallmark of our time. Terrorism and violent extremism impact on all core areas of our common endeavors: peace and security, sustainable development, human rights, and humanitarian action. Through their actions by holding territory, challenging international borders, committing human rights abuses, and using the internet and social media to promote their atrocious crimes, terrorists and violent extremist groups seek to challenge our shared values of peace, justice, and human dignity. Terrorism and violent extremism transcend cultures and geographic boundaries and should not be associated with any religion, nationality, or ethnic group. As the Secretary General Antonio Guterres stressed at the Arab League summit a few days ago in Jordan, and I quote, "On too many people have fallen into the trap of presenting the despicable acts of Daesh and Al-Qaeda as driven by Islam, when in fact they utterly defy the faith." End of quote. Indeed, it is the Arab people and Muslims and all communities of this region that are the primary victims of terrorism and violent extremism in the world. For this reason, in his report on the implementation of the United Nations Global Counterterrorism Strategy, the Secretary General stressed the need to step up comprehensive and purposeful international cooperation to effectively prevent violent extremism and counterterrorism. This is particularly relevant for the collaboration between the United Nations and the League of Arab States. In this context, I am pleased to express our sincere appreciation for the vision of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which demonstrated its international leadership by establishing a global center of excellence for multilateral counterterrorism cooperation through the United Nations Counterterrorism Center, which I lead. And this morning, I had the privilege to have an audience with His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, to express our sincere appreciation for the support of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to the United Nations Counterterrorism Center. With the generous contribution of $110 million from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the United Nations Counterterrorism Center has become a major counterterrorism capacity building arm of the United Nations. And the UN Counterterrorism Center has successfully advanced over 40 projects and initiatives with over 100 member states of the United Nations during the course of the last 4 years. Your Highnesses and Excellencies, the United Nations has been at the forefront of developing the international, normative, and legal framework to address terrorism through stronger international collaboration. And in this regard, I would like to also express the appreciation for the role being played by Egypt as chair of the Security Council Counterterrorism Committee. Through this, and with the leadership of Saudi Arabia as chair of the UN Counterterrorism Advisory Board, the Arab states have a strong voice on the most pressing issues in regard to international counterterrorism. And we have received the support of a number of other Arab countries represented here, most recently by the state of Qatar for the work of the United Nations Counterterrorism Center, for which we express sincere appreciation. The Arab world is at the forefront of the fight against terrorism. And the Arab countries represented here have developed good practices in many areas of countering terrorism and preventing violent extremism that could offer advice to other countries which grapple with terrorism. Your Highnesses, Excellencies, traditional military or security-focused counterterrorism operations have shown some success, but in most cases, these are not sufficient to stop the spread of violent extremism and terrorism. We have to move together upstream and address the conditions conducive to the spread of terrorism. For this reason, the United Nations Plan of Action to Prevent Violent Extremism seeks to provide more content to addressing the conditions conducive to terrorism in the framework of the United Nations Global Counterterrorism Strategy. The UN Plan of Action to Prevent Violent Extremism is focused on a practical, inclusive, and comprehensive approach, and it provides more than 70 recommendations to member states and the United Nations to support them. The United Nations appreciates the support of the Arab countries and the League of Arab States for the adoption by consensus of General Assembly Resolution 7291 last year on the review of the Global Counterterrorism Strategy. Your Highnesses, Excellencies, the UN General Assembly resolution adopted last year invited member states and regional organizations to consider developing national and regional plans of action to prevent violent extremism according to their national and regional priorities. And we very much hope to work closely with the forums of the Arab League, and in particular with the Arab League Council of Interior Ministers in this regard. Regional cooperation is particularly important to address the drivers of violent extremism. Preventing violent extremism has many dimensions, but there is nothing more urgent than the need to protect and engage our young men and women. In this context, the United Nations welcomes the innovative approaches and leadership of Arab states to support young people. Such leadership is expressed by the Kingdom of Jordan and His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince of Jordan, in shepherding the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2250 in the year 2014 on youth, peace, and security. An increasing number of states in the Arab world in particular are looking for support by the United Nations in building their counterterrorism capacities. Through the United Nations Counterterrorism Center, we are working with countries across the Arab world, including Iraq, Jordan, Morocco, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Sudan, Tunisia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, on an increasing number of projects and issues such as border management, travel safety, the financing of terrorism, and youth employment and skills development. We are now seeking to make our cooperation more systematic and build a framework for strategic dialogue and interaction between the United Nations and the League of Arab States, which could guide the development of collaborative programs and projects. This includes strategic partnerships with the Secretariat of the Council of Arab Interior Ministers, with which we are developing a memorandum of understanding, and we are working closely with His Excellency the Secretary General, Dr. Ali Koman, in this regard. as well as working closely with the League of Arab States in Cairo under the leadership of His Excellency Dr. Abu Ghait. Your Highnesses and Excellencies, our role is to provide support at the request and at the full consent of the specific governments and regional organizations concerned within the framework of the global counterterrorism strategy. And I hope that our participation and the participation of the United Nations in this August ministerial meeting will be the beginning of a strategic dialogue between the United Nations and this important forum, the Council of Arab Interior Ministers, to enable us to build a strong and substantive partnership. This is not only a political imperative, but a moral duty, as counterterrorism collaboration is part of the broader agenda to build and sustain a sustainable peace around the world. The United Nations stands ready to support your national and regional efforts in regard to the priorities that you establish. And I once again wish to thank the government and people of Tunisia for their warm hospitality, and also His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, the Honorary President of this august forum, for his vision and leadership. Thank you very much indeed.